folks, welcome into a brand new episode of the Crowd Assist podcast presented by Trainwreck Sports. As always, Wake here with Kevin Masseri to preview the AFC Championship Game between the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. And joining us today, recurring guest. Last time I said future recurring guest because I knew we'd have him back. Matt Parrino, New York Upstate. Had you on before the season began. It's great to have you back here, man. How's your conference championship week going?
Oh man, it has been a different level of busy. I think by the time it's over, I will have done 25 either appearances on podcasts or radio hits, which is like it's a lot, and it's a lot of the same thing, but it's fun too. Like seeing the excitement about this game from people around the country. I did Green Bay today, I did Phoenix today, and this morning I did Tampa, and so it's just like people are excited to watch the Bills. I mean, it's a completely different realm for Bills Mafia these days.
Yeah, I haven't been this excited to watch the Bills in my entire life. Well, actually, maybe since last week, to be completely honest. But since we're so excited, got to tell you something else I'm really excited about. I'm getting Picasso's pizza delivered to me for the AFC Championship game because they deliver nationwide. I've said it every show since we started this season. I'll say it again, open for takeout and delivery. And they've been supporting our community in Buffalo for 4 generations now, giving that beautiful cup and char pepperoni. Man, so even the Long Islanders here think it's good pizza. So you know it's good. Make sure you guys get it.
Let me bring something up about Picasso's real quick. All right, they had the goat sandwich back in the day, the old Bailey location. It was like this little. It looked like a hamburger when you first saw it. It was called a Grandwich, and it was the best bread I've ever had. So listen, I know you guys are tight with Picasso's. Hit them up. Bring back the Grandwich. Take me back to my childhood. I need the same bread, the same everything. It was amazing. So I love Picasso's.
You know what, Picasso's, if you're listening, here's the deal. This weekend, you bring back Graham, Matt Parrino. So, we'll get into the action this week. We haven't talked since before the season began. So, just kind of to start off the conversation. And listeners, we do want to know, what are your biggest concerns heading into the AFC Championship? If you tweet it in, respond to our YouTube page with the live streams going on there, we'll talk about it on the air here. But Matt, over the course of the season, I know we're all shocked that Josh Allen is in the MVP conversation, but outside of that, what has been the most shocking to you, covering the Bills as the season's gone on?
Wow, that's a good question.
Nice.
I think probably I don't know if it's shocking, but something that has been surprising to me is that they haven't found a way to find success in the run game while evolving into the offense that is really predicated on the passing offense. And it's easy to understand and see. We watch this team in every week and kind of all aspects of it. Why, when you go so pass heavy and you're so dependent on your arsenal of weapons at receiver, and even Dawson Knox the last month of the season that he came on and he's having more success. Can you hear that? Can you hear that little dinging?
I don't think so.
Can you hear that?
No.
Little ding.
Okay, good. All right, good. Yeah, I get a phone call. My phone's hooked up to the
PS4 over there, Matt.
And all of a sudden, I'm hearing like
Matt's like mid-game over there playing a little Madden, being Brian Daboll on the sticks.
I mean, I'd lie if I said I didn't want to finish the game of Chell. So
listen, I should have fired up Madden before I came on the show. This would be the show to do it. But no, I know, right? But I thought that they'd be able to run the ball more effectively, given how successful Singletary was last year. But I think, I think Zach Moss, like throwing him into the mix, it kind of stunted the growth of Singletary a little bit. What we failed to realize last year was Singletary kind of was so successful in that lead role. Frank Gore became, not even a complimentary piece by the end. He was just kind of, hey, let's give it a couple times to Frank Gore because he's Frank Gore by the end of it. And so I think the dynamic of never really knowing who was the guy and Devin really never getting a chance to get a rhythm going has impacted this run game. But it seems like this offensive line, we're talking to Feliciano today, and they want to run it. And I think every time the ball is in a running back's hands, you're going to see this offensive line raise their level of play because, they want to run block. That's part of who, you are as a lineman. And so that's one thing that I thought would be a little bit better this year.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of interesting because Devin Singletary is someone who I think has a real opportunity to, possibly play a big role in this game. If you look at DVOA, the Chiefs are dead last in the league against the running backs, according to Football Outsiders. And it's not like I expect the Chiefs or the Bills to, give Singletary 12 touches or, something even 12 is not a big number, but he hasn't gotten more than that since the San Francisco game. So, it's not like I expect them to change their plan, but would you be shocked if maybe they wanted to get Singletary more involved just because, obviously that's where the Chiefs, they struggle the most. Their secondary is good. Their run defense is putrid.
Yeah, no, I tweeted before the Ravens game that I thought with Moss out, they were primed to get the ball in Singletary's hands a little bit more, and it didn't happen. And obviously, Dable talked about what they saw Baltimore able to do against Derrick Henry the week before, and we're like, we better not get too greedy. I think I tweeted it out. I thought that between TJ Yeldon and Singletary, they could combine for maybe 125, 150 yards. Whoa, was I wrong? But I'm kind of saving that. I got it bookmarked, and I'm just going to retweet it if that ends up happening in the Chiefs game, because to your point, I think they can have success running the ball, but you got to be careful. And this is, I think, the ultimate issue with this whole topic is that you don't want to go away from what your identity is. And let's be honest, it's that passing game, and it's going 4 wide if healthy. If Cole Beasley, he landed back on the injury report again today, which obviously is probably disappointing for Bills fans, but if he can go, if he has something to give this weekend, and I haven't gone back and watched the tape necessarily of the Baltimore game. I don't know how effective he was or wasn't, Cole, in terms of the knee, but I think they want to get out there and they want to run 4 wide. And they want to test this secondary. And we'll see if they can do it. But I still think, to your point, 12 carries. I think we see 12 carries, and I think Singletary can average 4.5 to 5.5 yards a carry with that kind of workload.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me is I'm a big Devin Singletary fan. I'm pretty vocal about I think he's the best running back on this team by far. I like a little bit what I've seen from Zach Moss, but I like Devin Singletary. I like what he can bring. I just like that how he fits in this offense as we saw last year. It's a concern. I mean, I think they really need to get it going, but you mentioned the best point. They're a passing team. They're in top 3 in most categories. They get it done through the air. Now, leads me to our next point. Injuries. Gabe Davis on the one of my favorite Gabriel Davis, stream Gabe Davis out there for your daily fantasy sports players. The biggest thing though with him, and then we know what's going on with Beasley. Is this the weekend you fire up Kenny Stills? Is this? I know you guys have reported over on your site that Jake Kumaro is going to be re-signing back to the practice squad. What's going to go on there? I mean, do you think that there's plans now? I mean, everyone's been waiting for Stills and Freeman, but is there a better game than this one to call up Stills and Freeman in what should be an offensive showdown?
No, and I think I'm really interested to see how this progresses because with Gabriel Davis, because I think if he's all right, if he's not limping around, I think he's going to be on the field. He's been too important to this offense this season, and you talked about liking him. I mean, there's really not much to not like. He's been that good. But I think Kenny Stills is a guy that has experience in this league. He's played in some big games. You go back to last season when he played against the Kansas City Chiefs, 3 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown in that playoff game. And, it all comes down to how comfortable he is here. He's had 3 weeks-ish to kind of get up to speed on what the Bills are doing, get the playbook down, and maybe build some rapport if he's able to with Josh Allen. And that's the tough thing with all these guys taking the practice reps. It's probably been tough, I would imagine. We don't get to see practice really at all anymore because they're able to go inside, and when they go inside, the media because of COVID protocols aren't able to go in there now. So I don't even know how much Kenny Stills is working into practice. We haven't really seen it, at least before you can kind of get a little bit of a sense of it. But I think, to your point, this is a week that it makes sense just from the sense that he knows the opponent. And if he has come anywhere in the last 3 weeks to a level of comfort with maybe a limited role, a limited amount of snaps, how many they'd want to throw him out there, because there's a lot of times with 4 wide receiver, they move their pieces around a little bit. I mean, with Isaiah McKenzie in the mix too, so he probably wouldn't be seeing even 100% of those kinds of snaps anyway. I'd be interested to see what they do there.
Yeah, I mean, I want to keep it. So what's interesting to me is I want to keep it to the Colts side of the ball now, the Chiefs side of the ball with their offensive line. They've had some banged up injuries there at their guard and their tackle, not participating. We saw Mitchell Schwartz have his things too. Do you like the Chiefs offensive line in general? What's your thought on that? Are they putting Mahomes out to dry? Is that part of their struggles right now? As I've seen some of their reporters out there, if there is a place they don't love their team specifically, it's on that O-line. What's your opinion on that? And how do you view that Colts or extended Colts? Because I keep tweeting people that the Colts were better than the Chiefs. That's a topic for a different day. One that is absolutely true without Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, you can't take Patrick Mahomes away. But your opinion on the Chiefs' offensive line, is it a cause for concern, or are those shortcomings really not a big deal?
They are a big deal, and this is a different offensive line. It's systematically deteriorated over the course of the season with each kind of thing that happened. I mean, it started before the season. I don't remember his name, but they lost somebody who opted out. Then they had the guy that they brought over from the Jets, I believe. He went out early in the season. Yep. And then Mitchell Schwartz, obviously, not having him is massive. I mean, we've seen the impact that Darrell Williams has made. Having a strong right tackle in this league is just almost as important these days as a strong left tackle. The Bills are lucky in that they have kind of the bookends. So I think that's a big storyline. And I also think that goes into why they've struggled to run the ball. Listen, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire was really good at the beginning of the season. And I think that he kind of maybe started to hit that rookie wall before the injury. They have not been even close to the same running team since he left, and since these injuries have piled up, because Le'Veon Bell is cooked. I think I haven't liked anything that I've seen out of Le'Veon Bell. I watched him a ton because I had to stream him in fantasy down the stretch, and so I watched a lot of his games where he just wasn't able to get anything going. I mean, he looks like a shell of his former self. So if you're looking at Edwards-Helaire gives them a better option, but I still think it's going to come down to Mahomes in this passing game. How do the Bills generate pressure? We were talking to Jerry Hughes today, and I asked him specifically about the difference going from Lamar to going against Mahomes. And he said, with Lamar, it's all about boxing him in. Like with Mahomes, because of his pocket presence, most of the time he's going to get out of the pocket. And when that happens, it's about getting and landing as fast as possible. So the reactionary stuff, something where I feel like if you wanted to point out an area where maybe Mario Addison has struggled or left you like wanting a little bit more, that might be an area because he's older. I mean, Jerry Hughes has been explosive. I still think he's bringing. But I thought AJ Epinesa, he's kind of added a little bit of a spark in that department, like that secondary part of the play where a quarterback maybe can roll out. Like I can't remember, was it the Miami game or there was one game where I thought Epinesa, unbelievable drive to win his one-on-one battle. The quarterback kind of rolled out to the right side.
Yeah,
he ended up making an attack. Yes. And so, I think that's where it's going to come down to. How much can they limit him? I don't think you're going to like contain him or limit him unless you really go back to that game plan they had early in the season where they're just like, all right, run, and we'll rely on a healthy Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano and Jordan Poyer and, maybe some of those interior defensive linemen to show up and play better.
Yeah, and I mean, to kind of pick up that conversation, so they did bring over a couple of names. Most notably, you mentioned Kelechi Osemele from the Jets signed, and he actually looked pretty good in the first 5 weeks. And that's the guard that they were expecting to play. They actually lost Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. Their opt-out for Doctor. I mean, he's fighting COVID. Props to him. Out there on the front lines fighting the COVID virus currently, and I've seen pictures of him fighting that. So couldn't opt out for a better reason. And they actually drafted Lucas Niang, a guy that had really high hopes from TCU, who voluntarily opted out as well. Not quite as sure with his story, but he did make that opt out. So 3 right there. And then, you're mentioning the other guy you can't forget is Mitchell Schwartz, a guy that is on the IR right now, a big loss for them. They're really, really thin on the offensive line. Their starters have gotten it done. Mike Remmers had a weird illness last week, did end up playing. Eric Fisher, obviously, one of the better. And then Austin Reiter, Mitch Marsh's fill-in is at center, and El Grady and Austin Weil. They're 2 guards that they're playing right now, but they cannot afford any even short-term injuries at these position groups. They get thin quickly, Matt. So it's something that, we've touched on. I think it's a key to this game. Can the Jerry Hugheses, can the AJ Epinesas? We've seen some of the D linemen on the injury report. We've talked a little bit about the receiver group. Are you worried about any of those names? I know Quentin Jefferson came back today. You worried about Vernon Butler? What are your thoughts on that? Because that's such a huge portion of this game, especially with not the world's best O-line.
If you were ranking like players in the defensive line who I think would be you can't afford to lose in this game, like I'm not sure if Vernon Butler really ranks in that top 5 or 6, just because they've been able to withstand some smaller snap counts from him, even as recently as last week. I think that Harrison Phillips, him coming on, is one of the most under talked about important storylines for why this defense has really started to flip the script. Him being able to assert himself a little bit, Zimmer's kind of motor, that helps Ed Oliver be who they drafted him to be. And then on the edge, I mean, listen, having 2 guys in Mario Edison and Jerry Hughes playing at that game in that spot last week is all pro caliber performance. And that's always in there with Hughes. And I think it's just been a situation where he's gone, 7 years since he played with Mario Williams. He's never had that kind of talent on the other side of him or anywhere really on the defensive line, as good as Kyle Williams was in his prime. I mean, we're not talking about another Pro Bowl caliber edge that he's ever really played with. So he's always had to be the guy to generate it and know that he's getting the double teams. And last week he was just possessed. And it's going to take that again, I think. I think they're going to need to replicate that kind of performance against an offensive line, to your point, that has a lot of holes. And, Mitchell Schwartz, you go back to their Super Bowl run, he was critical. I mean, his play was a difference maker, and to not have that, you can attack. And I'll be interested to see what they do on the defensive line. I really think Daryl Johnson, if healthy, has to be active because of his special teams contributions. And we won't go too down that rabbit hole of special teams with my boy Kevin here, because all of us will get a little bit too excited. We'll have to get me excited.
I take enough problems with Corey Bajorquez for special teams for literally a year. So every time he hits a punt,
every time I see you tweet about the punter, dude, I just giggle to myself, because I want to be as passionate about anything as you are about special teams and punting. It's phenomenal. I get a kick out of it. I'm a former punter. Who else is? Hey man, the best in the business, man. Joe Biscaglia. He's the same way, dude. He really gets into that stuff, and
right there. Me, him, and Brian Dable.
That's funny. Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good point though you bring up about who we're gonna activate and activate. Trent Murphy played really well, but really to wrap up your point real quickly on Jerry Hughes, that pick 6 does not happen without the play prior. I mean, it's pretty straight up that, yes, that was Taron Johnson. We all know, we saw the play millions of times already, which we should, and we will continue to. But Jerry Hughes is the reason that play happened. They put them in a 3rd and long, had his receiver wide open, but Jerry Hughes was the one that absolutely affected that play, changed the game with his 2 sacks and that play. I mean, I just don't think you can say how well he played. I think he was the player of the game for sure. And that's saying something with how that game went. There's a couple candidates for that, but I just think he played so well. And you're going to absolutely need that. And Daryl Johnson's going to have to come in, help on special teams. Do you inactivate Trent Murphy now? Do you what's Matt Parrino's defensive line strategy? Because one of those guys has to sit. It's not Harrison Phillips right now. What do they do? Because I think Trent Murphy brought enough to me. What happens on the defensive line, comes Sunday inactives?
Well, if Vernon can't go, I don't see them bringing up Brandon Bryant off the practice squad unless something's been going on there that would make him earn some time. So I think if Vernon Butler can't go, you probably activate Trent Murphy and have him be in the rotation with Epinesa behind Hughes and Addison, and then you ask Daryl Johnson to just be your special teams standout. And I think that's fine. And they might be able to get away with some other things. I mean, I've been dive too deep into the depth chart, but and I don't think this would, but if you need a roster spot in the game like this, I know Dean Marlowe wears a lot of different hats. He's as a secondary player is a little bit more limited in this kind of matchup. He doesn't I think he's more in that kind of game where a team wants to run the ball a lot. And maybe maybe they will need him if they need somebody to step in for the run game. But there's little pieces here and there where you look on both sides of the ball. I know with Reggie Gilliams played a big role for them on special teams. There's a bunch of different ways they can go. But I think that if Butler can't go, I'd imagine Murphy will be. And just to reward him too, to have a game like that in a big spot, it would be probably a little devastating to him to then go the next week and be inactive. But I don't think he's going to take it poorly. They've proven all year that they have guys that have bought in and will do whatever. I'm sure Tyler Kroft's sitting at home pretty pissed off right now, but by all accounts,
he should be playing. Yeah. He should be playing over Gilliam. To me, like, I think you have enough special team spots, especially you're activating Daryl Johnson in a way. I mean, you just have so many special teams players, and the special teams unit has played well. But at some point, in a past offense that he's made game-winning plays. We saw it against the Rams. I'd like to see Tyler Kroft in a game where he might need points. And who would you rather have in situations, Reggie Gilliam or Tyler Kroft? I don't know. I mean, that's up to the coaching staff to determine. That special team still continues to trump some of those roster spots, and I don't fully agree with it. But we do have a lot of questions about the flipping the side offensive lines now. We do have a lot of questions about the Bills' offensive line. Seems to be a pretty hot topic here in the chat. PJ wants to know how you see our offensive line holding up against Clark and Jones, kind of the reverse conversation. They got a lot of pressure on Allen in week 6. So what do you see on the reverse side of this?
Huge news. Brian Winters likely won't be asked to try to guard Chris Jones, which is a huge development, just starting right there. He struggled this season. I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, he's definitely on the other side of, where his real good football was, and whatever. It's just the game sometimes passes you by a little bit. Every which way they tried to give him an opportunity, but he wasn't able to take advantage. You got John Feliciano back in the mix. I think that the continuity there gives them a chance to be successful. I feel like, he was talking a little bit about it today, the comfort level that he has now just in all the games he's played next to Darrell Williams. I mean, that's something that, a lot of times teams spend, or players on an offensive line spend all of training camp and all of the offseason, the preseason, developing that rapport. Well, Feliciano was out half the year. He didn't have any of that. And then he was just thrown in and be like, okay, you and Darrell Williams, go, be good. And I think now, 9, 10, 11 games into it, they've really, found their comfort zone. And I think it's going to come down to how well does Ike Butker, hold up in this game. He's been somebody that has been an absolute bright spot, even when he struggled. Listen, this is an undrafted guy that's come in here and earned himself a spot. I don't think it's ever going to be all pro caliber as good as he's been in spots here. And who knows? I don't want to put a ceiling on him by any stretch of the imagination, but he's played really well. And when he's had maybe some moments where it hasn't been as good, that's to be expected. I mean, this is his first real playing time, and it's been on a really big stage. And luckily, he gets to play between two veterans like Morris and Deion Dawkins. But it's kind of a luxury for a young player. But, this is a big game, and he's got a lot of miles now this season that he's logged. And you got to hope, if you're a Bills fan, that type of experience lends itself to a big performance in a game like this where he might be tested. And, there'll be help. Don't get me wrong. I think because you have a guy like Jones, and I'm not super in the X's and O's with their game plan and how they're going to attack the Bills this week. But a lot of times a defensive line like this that has Frank Clark and Chris Jones, they'll come at you with 4, and you got to hold up in those moments. Yep. And can this line do it? I think they can. I think they're built to. I think Mitch Morse. I was reading. I think it was Joe. I was reading him, and he said that Mitch on tape hasn't had the best 2 playoff games and was a little bit worse against the Ravens. And you start to think about, oh man, if that's the case, if that's the trend, the way he's trending, you get worried about a matchup like this against a top guy like Jones. But he's going up against his old team. He's going to be back in his the city and state where his family lives now, that they make their home. This is a huge moment, a huge game. And he's got to come out here and earn that. This is the game where Mitch Morse comes out maybe and earns that contract more than anything else he's done. And listen, he's been really important in Josh's development. I'm not sitting here suggesting he hasn't earned it, but this is what you go out and you spend $11 million a year on a center for these games. Yep.
Yeah, what's weird is that's still that benching after the concussion where he was active, and we won't admit if that was a benching or what that was. Weird scenario because he was active, cleared from concussion protocol. I did hear his comments today about being able to write a book on that concussion protocol, but it being his 5th recorded concussion. But I mean that's a bizarre. Coupling your point, that's such a bizarre story to me still that I don't know if we'll ever hear what that was about. If they just wanted to try Feliciano, what that was, if they didn't. I don't know. They won't really say. They kind of went week to week on that. But the Ike Butker point is a really good one because how about this? The Bills cut him to try to do some roster gymnastics initially in their initial, and he was claimed by the Chiefs. What's interesting there is the second the Chiefs had to do some roster gymnastics, they were all, Brandon Beane was like claim. Since they have never ever exposed him anywhere near waivers, they stashed him for a good year and a half. To the point where it's like, this guy has something. So to me, it was like Ike Butker's just like automatically on the roster. Even some of us left him off roster projections at points. But he was just automatically like a guy that I thought had potential to play, and he's been good. And we have a comment here from Adam. Is the problem with the run game with no Cody Ford? And I'm not a huge Cody Ford fan. We can go down that a different time, but it seems like Butker is more of a pass blocker. Yeah, I mean, I think the whole team is pass blockers with the way they've been throwing the ball and the inefficiencies running the ball. Cody Ford had a big game when they ran the ball Singletary versus the Rams. It's a good defense. It's a fair point. Any comment on that, Matt? Do you think there's anything going on with the loss of Ford, or is that negligible, kind of to like the Vernon Butler point?
I mean, I think that, if he has a strength, especially when he was on the outside, it was definitely run blocking. I think he was still developing on the inside, and that's another thing. Like, I don't even know if we'll really have an answer on Cody Ford until 2022 because I really just don't. I'm out of the business personally, and this is not a shot at anybody that projects or that has a take. Like, that's what this is all for, social media, podcasts, all that kind of stuff. But I'm just out of the business watching this team up close and personal, like not even like Josh Allen necessarily or some other young players that have developed. You look at Wyatt Teller, who was a guy that they traded away, who's turned into, a Pro Bowl caliber guard in Cleveland. I just don't think we'll really have a read, especially on a guy like Cody Ford, who came in here and there was kind of some uncertainty about where he was going to play from the jump. Then they said, okay, we're going to put you at right tackle, but we're always kind of going to leave the door open. And then the first sign of being able to do it, we're going to flip you inside, and we're going to flip you inside to right guard. Well, no, we don't really like you there. We think you'll be better.
We're going to cut Spain.
Yeah, there's just a lot going on for a kid that's in his second year and who had some work to do to begin with. He told me when he first got drafted here, at Oklahoma, he never had his hand in the dirt. Like getting used to blocking at this level and all the nuance to it, and in an offense where Brian Dable makes it tougher on his players than most offensive coordinators because they value smart guys that can pick it up. I think Cody Ford's a really smart guy, but I think it's something he's never done before, so it's going to take some time. So I'm nowhere near writing off Cody Ford. Sure. I agree, though. There's been some, what you've seen in 2 years, you're probably not sitting back and saying we're set at any one of those spots. And I think to the point where he's got a very important offseason in front of him where he's going to have to make some impressions in camp, in the offseason, and preseason next year going into his third season.
Yeah, and before we lose you, I do want to have to ask this last thing about Mahomes. I mean, it's beaten to death, but how do you feel about this turf toe injury? They're saying he's going to be fine. I mean, I'm sure they're injecting whatever they can, but that turf toe, more than even the concussion throat thing, that has to be the most talked about storyline, right? Because can he move out of the pocket like he's used to? We saw him struggling prior to the concussion, maybe even led to taking that hit in the first place. What are your thoughts on that? I have to get your take on that, the whole Mahomes thing, as much as you can give us on what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, if that foot is any bit of a problem, it's going to be an issue because, I mean, his game is all about mobility, and not even like running like Lamar or Kyler even. Well, he's done it. I mean, remember that Tennessee Titans play? I mean, to me, and listen, I'm not really in the rooting business anymore when it comes to the NFL, but that was one of the freaking coolest plays I've ever seen, man. Like to just tippy toe on the sidelines like that and take it to the house. Like, I mean, Josh Allen has done a bunch of those kind of plays, but it's cool knowing how dangerous of a player he is as a passer to do that. But taking his mobility away would be a huge win for the Bills defense that's going to try and figure out a way to not necessarily like completely contain him, but touch him and hit him and get after him and just let him know they're coming and they're there, because he's going to make plays. And this is actually like a really tough defense to play if you're from Patrick Mahomes' perspective when they're on, because you can make plays and they will bend, but they'll usually get things figured out in the red zone. It's going to come down to who you're going to put on Travis Kelce. Are you going to let him be the guy, a difference maker in the red zone? Can you make those key stops and key plays? And then can your offense outscore them? I've been telling it all week. I currently have them being able to do that. I think it's going to be a game in the 20s if there's weather. And so I'm going 27-24. I haven't seen the latest weather report. I don't know if you guys have. I haven't checked it today. But yeah, if there's like freezing rain or something, which I heard or I read something about earlier in the week, wouldn't that be just awful?
Yeah, that's not what we have in mind. It's like, we expect this giant scoring outburst between the Ravens and the Bills. Might not even get that with Bills Chiefs if the weather's going to be bad, and especially if Mahomes isn't 100%. You saw how many throws he was missing, wide open guys with just before the concussion last week. But I know you have to get out of here, Matt. Thank you for getting your prediction in, because that was going to be the last question. Maniac did just say, just when I was getting a little nervous, I get a peek at Parrino's hair. Could not be more confident. I don't know if there's a better way to let you go than right there.
Oh, man, Zach's my guy, dude. Shout out to Zach. All the things you guys are doing out here on Trainwreck Sports, the Crowd Assist podcast, Degenerate Al, my boy Kanzi from way back in the day. You guys do awesome stuff. I'm one of your biggest fans, so keep it up.
It means the world, Matt. Really does. Excited to have you back on again soon. Okay.
All right. Take care, guys.
Always fun having Matt on here. We didn't talk a lot about Bills on offense there, so maybe. Yeah, no. Is there anything you want to touch on the other side of the ball before we work our way over there? Because
we kind of jumped all over based on questions and whatnot for Matt. Great having him for 30 minutes there. But to kind of touch up on the show a little bit, I'm interested in whatever's going on with Gabriel Davis, because the first question we asked Matt, what's going to happen at receiver, right? The Bills are such a passing offense. Can Kenny Stills jump in? And I think I seriously think he's a direct replacement for Gabriel Davis. He is a similar veteran version of what he does and what he did in his career. Now, Kenny Stills can play a little more of the slot. He was protection to Beasley as well. Obviously, he's showing up on the report today after not showing up yesterday, which obviously we've seen him, it shouldn't be shocking, but still never like to see practice in LP. So we have to monitor that. But I think it's the week for Kenny. So even though he's been away, I still don't think you can suit up Kumaro. Is he officially on the roster? Did they announce that officially?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, that was Ryan Talbot, Matt's partner over there. Did release that per sources. I don't think you can get him up and ready. It's possible with his knowledge of the offense, but I think it's Kenny Stills needs to be active in this football game. Can he have that instant rapport with Josh Allen? I think it's possible. I think he can bring a lot to the table. And that's saying something.
He's really good. He's one of those guys, like when he was in Houston, he was good at getting open, knowing when Deshaun Watson was in trouble and making himself available, kind of like what Diggs does here for Allen already, but maybe not at such an elite level. He is a good, like, shallow safety valve type guy. But, one thing I was wondering, and I had a group chat that was arguing about it before, I think yesterday, if Gabe Davis isn't going to go, I mean, it seems like Duke Williams physically matches up better with Gabe Davis than Kenny Stills does, if I'm not mistaken. I think Kenny Stills is like about 20 pounds lighter, not as good at going up and getting those passes. Is there a world, do you think, where we see Duke Williams maybe just because he's more familiar with Josh Allen, and maybe we don't see Stills yet? Because if we're not going to dress Stills for this game, then what was the point of bringing him really in at all?
That's kind of my point. Something doesn't make sense there. They said it wasn't because of Beasley, which you can't believe now at this point. If he doesn't go this weekend, you can't believe that. It was because of Beasley. And I love my guy, Brandon Bean, an executive of the year, per our bottom feed right now, scrolling at the bottom as we speak. But I'm going to have to say that was absolutely directly to Beasley, unless he plays this week. If we even see a Duke Williams elevation over Kenny Stills, meaning he's traveling, he's practicing, he's warming up pre-game prior to inactives, I don't think it was ever going to be the case unless they do sign him long. They're in the system. We want to get him in on vet deals for next year. We want to bring Freeman in. We want to bring Kenny Stills. Per our sources, bringing in, obviously we had the source of bringing in Freeman. So to me, I think that we'll find out what that meant on Sunday, but I think Kenny Stills has to be up. There is a world Duke Williams comes up over him. I think they flirted. I'm a Duke Williams fan too.
I know you are.
They are different players.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that you brought Kenny Stills into play this week, and I think you throw him a bone by potentially bringing him there, seeing how Gabe does warming up wise, and I think you give him the jersey if need be. But Duke wouldn't shock me. That would be a move that they've ran with people who have been here long term. They don't make a lot of moves. Moving away from Quentin Spain was like really one of the biggest moves they made in benching Brian Reinders. So a little bit on the O-line, but outside of that, they don't. Even Levi Wallace's struggles, they stuck with him. Taron Johnson, they stuck with him. Corey Bajorquez had a huge leash for 2 years. Tyler Bass even, had a leash as a rookie kicker when he was, costing points early on this season. Yeah. They'll point to all those examples of why that they won't really go away from who they play. So is Kenny Stills really like 7th or 8th on the depth chart? Probably. But I do think he has an ability to do something different, experience route runner, be able to work improv with Josh, go over some of that on the plane. And I think that that's very possible that we see Kenny Stills in this game. We won't if Gabe is fine. I mean, that's for sure.
Oh,
that's for sure. Yeah.
So. And the only thing that makes Kenny Stills like an option to me is his improvisation. Like he's a jazz musician of a wide receiver, if I've ever seen one. Like he's good at making do after a play kind of starts to break
like down. Stevie Johnson almost in that mold. But I think he does bring something to the table and at least presents options to where I think he's better than some of the receivers that the Chiefs play, Pringle, Demarcus Robinson and others. So I really think he could be like a receiver 4 in this league. I don't know what happened in Houston with a really good quarterback. I'm not really sure where that situation unfolded, but I'm really excited to see the Bills offense. I'm not excited to see that, as Matt on his way out reported, or hadn't reported yet, but the 44 degrees and that rainy showers and 10 to 15 miles per hour. That's very Buffalo-y for it being like 45 and nice today there. And next weekend, the 31st, it's supposed to be 50 and sunny. So the following weekend would have been a great day to play a foosball game. But we're getting 44 in rain. Hopefully that moves. Saturday's supposed to be nice. Hopefully that moves back just a touch into Monday. Like we kind of saw the Bills-Ravens game, kind of get pushed and never come. So we're still holding out hope they're there.
If the weather doesn't change from that, obviously the strength of both
affects the Bills, man.
Yeah, it affects both of them, but the Bills more, right? As
I would think so. Game, we saw the same thing in the first time these two teams played. We saw Josh against the Patriots first game. And it is a thing. Like Josh has got to learn to play better in the weather and the elements. He didn't have his greatest game against the Ravens, but the Ravens have a good defense. But it is a factor. We saw it the first half of that Patriots game, especially when it was like snowy sleet and they couldn't move the ball. We saw it against the Chiefs the first time. I think it matters, and I think it affects him. He needs to come up with solutions. Brian Daboll needs to protect the weather elements in this game. So
and especially if Beasley's out, I think the one thing that the weather could do is maybe make Mahomes slip up if that toe is bothering him. But I'm not going to count on the weather re-aggravating an injury. That's just not something that's really worth talking about as a talking point. But I did want to talk about Beasley because he was kind of like the only receiver that was his per usual last time the Bills played the Chiefs. Of course, Stephon Diggs got his. He had his 6 catches, 40-some yards, and a touchdown. But Beasley had 445 averaging a 10 clip. And, I was looking on Football Outsiders earlier, and they're the worst, the 28th in DVOA against passes going to the middle of the field. And when you break it down between, just whether it's deep middle or short middle, it's all just terrible. And that kind of brings me into the Chiefs inactive, the injury report that they have, because they have 2 DBs on there between Fenton and...
Did Fenton show up today? Did he just show up at the foot?
Yeah, I believe he did. He was the only one that wasn't on the injury report yesterday. Everybody else was there. So he's
even if they go, that's something to monitor with DBs. It's different than other position groups. That's something to monitor for sure.
Yeah, and we talked about this kind of with was Cody Felger. He's the Colts guy that we had on for
similar defense.
Similar defense, and both wearing thin in the secondary. And I was looking at who, let's say, one of them is out, and maybe one re-aggravates an injury or something, or they have to take some plays off. Their cornerback 2 would be Antonio Hamilton, Have you ever heard of that guy? I didn't until today.
I'll give you some numbers on Antonio Hamilton here in a second.
I got some already, actually.
I
can't. Yeah, 15 minutes before we aired, it's like I got some smelling salts in me, I swear. Most snaps he had all year was 43, and that was in week 17 when they rested all their starters. And so, throughout the entire year, Rashad Breeland has been their number 2 corner, and he's only allowed 5.5 yards a catch, which is a really, really good number, or yards per target, not even yards per catch. So if that were to be Antonio Hamilton going over to John Brown, even if it's just for a play or so, I really, really like that matchup. That doesn't even have to be said. But if it does come down to being a war of attrition and the Chiefs maybe have injuries piling up, having 2 of their better DBs on the field on the injury report, if you're looking for a glimmer of hope for Bills fans, I think that's definitely one.
I mean, if you look at the roster, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's including, Travarius Ward. You mentioned Rashad Breeland, Rashad Fenton. I mean, they're good, and they made a really good acquisition in acquiring Snead in the draft this year. A guy that was a nice find. He plays the slot though, so he'll see a lot of Beasley.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, their DVOA against slot receivers isn't great. So
Snead missed some time. He missed the first matchup. One might have been why Beasley had played pretty good. Sure. So, Rashad Fenton's a big loss for them. I think they'll slot Snead right into the slot if they lose Fenton, based on what these injuries are going on here. Mm-hmm. Willie Gay didn't practice, a backup linebacker. He's kind of important to their depth unit. And Le'Veon Bell didn't practice, right?
Yeah, no, he was a DNP today. He and who was the other one? Yeah, Gay was the other.
Yeah, Gay.
So yeah, and I mean, Le'Veon Bell not practicing, I don't know if that means a lot to me. I saw someone tweet the other day that the reason the Chiefs signed Le'Veon Bell is because they wanted no one else to have him. I'm like, no, I don't think so, man. I think he's just not as good of a football player as they hoped. If he is active this week and Edwards-Helaire isn't, it's still going to be the Darrell Williams show, right?
Yeah, it's Darrell Williams' show. He played a lot in the first matchup, if you remember. It was right before Bell was activated. He's a straight line runner. He reminds me, just of a run of the mill. Kind of reminds me of Myles Gaskin for all you fantasy players out there. Kind of that straight up style of, a little bit of everything, nothing great. So that's a win for the Bills. I don't think Edwards-Helaire can be full strength. I mean, he's coming off of it was a high ankle sprain, right?
Yeah, it was
something serious. I mean, look at Moss took a surgery out of this, guys. So,
and again, talking about the weather with all these important guys for the Chiefs that are on the injury report, you don't want a rookie running back with a high ankle sprain running.
He's getting 10 carries absolute most. He could be ready for the Super Bowl if they advance. But at most, I mean, you're looking at 8 to 10 carries. I mean, it's a Darrell Williams game, in which the Bills will take, and a banged up Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I'm not concerned at all. I mean, obviously with Patrick Mahomes, we have to monitor his health. They're going to be all roses and buttercups and peaches and cream and whatever you want to say. But they're missing some players. They're missing some offensive linemen. They have a corner that they play a lot in Rashad Breeland with a concussion and a shoulder injury. How effective can he be? Ankle and a hip for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Rashad Fenton with the foot. Sammy Watkins is coming back with the calf. Mahomes, we all know about him with the concussion in the toe, and Bell just deciding, his knee hurt, maybe because he played. So that's just a way for them to open up an active day game spot, potentially, as we saw with Mark Ingram last week. So playing the Bills in the playoffs is not good for vet running backs. They seem to see the inactive list in these cases because teams are like, the Bills can score. We might go a different direction with this. So, I mean, to kind of wrap up the Bills offense, and we went off tangent on the injuries, it's relevant because of the Chiefs DBs. I think they move the ball a lot. What can get in their way? Themselves, which hasn't happened a lot, and the weather. I don't like the weather. Someone asks, maybe Pagula should put a stadium with a retractable roof. 100% it's coming. I hate it. Hate to admit it.
If anyone asks for it, it's going to happen, right?
I'm sorry. I'm not sure where even I stand on it, but we have a franchise quarterback, a guy you're going to potentially give $400 million to at some point very soon.
Maybe this offseason, yeah.
Maybe as soon as even this offseason has been reported from national media. You get a roof on it. You protect your investment. We don't want any injuries. and it makes your franchise quarterback better. And you just said it. It makes Allen better, 100%. You do what is best for your investment. And we have Degenerate Allen here saying 70% chance of rain sounds awful.
Yeah, it does. He's right.
Couldn't agree more, especially for this team. Team years have passed with Tyrod Taylor. Take that. I would take that to the house. I think it would benefit under those Shady McCoy, Tyrod Taylor years. It does bring the pool down even a little bit more, but I think it takes the Bills' strength, as we saw against the Ravens, who had an amazing defensive game plan both ways. Both teams actually played pretty well. And really to lower that bar I think it'll affect Mahomes too, especially neck choked out, concussion, turf toe. Turf toe is terrible. As a soccer player, we played
same.
At least a couple times in big games. I just wasn't as good. I wasn't as good of a player, just straight up. I didn't have tons of shots in my leg all the time, but I just wasn't as good of a soccer player, period. At any point, was I as effective? Could I move the ball around? Yeah. Can Patrick Mahomes still have his upper body? Absolutely. But he is so good at escaping the pocket. These injuries are going to play a role for the Chiefs. The weather may play a role both ways. But offensively, the Bills are going to need to move the ball. And I thought they had a great game plan. Singletary, I know we had some talks about Yeldon would see, 30% or 20. He would have saw 0 snaps if it was possible. But he went limping off, needed a blow here and there. It would have been closer to 95% for Singletary. He's going to play the entire game. And I think in a different game plan, he's going to be more effective. So what do the Chiefs do? I think the Bills need to drive out of third quarter. Daboll came and said, you know what, we're going to mix in the run and the pass this time. And it worked. Not to say I want 3 Zach Moss runs in the playoffs. Not ideal. But I do think they need to mix the run and the pass with these elements. Singletary has the ability to catch out of the backfield, to bring some drive starters. Short passes are also part of the running game that people like to leave out. So those drive starters you see to Beasley, those drive start screens to Diggs.
Brown on the screen is dangerous.
Brown to drive starter, exactly. The Bills have plenty of them. I mean, even McKenzie's are essentially runs most of the time. So Bills have plenty of drive starters to do. Bills offense is going to be in good shape. And I really think, and I'm standing by my take, and I tweeted it yesterday, and everyone's like, you're sleeping on Tyreek Hill. I think the Colts were the worst matchup for the Bills. They almost didn't get by them. I think they do a lot of things good, and that is troubling because you can't mess up at any area of the field. Phillip Rivers looked great in that. I know he played out of his mind to me and went out with that game. But they were a good football team. They were better than the Ravens. They were better than what we saw from the Titans. They were better than the Steelers. They were probably better than the Browns. It's probably close. But I think the Bills played a really challenging 7 seed that maybe shouldn't have made the playoffs in any other season. So you take that to the Chiefs this year, and I think that they're seasoned. The Bills actually played every single top 12 AFC team except the Browns. Went 10-2 in those games. Yeah. So if they would have played the Browns, they would have played every top 12 team in the AFC.
That's great. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it would have been a crazy thing. Really only losing. Obviously, we know the Chiefs and the Titans, but I mean, 6-2 on the road, lots to look forward to on this offense, and should be 7-1. We all know about the luck chuck in here, so I think the offense is in good shape. That's not where I'm worried. It's can that defense, and if you want to switch it up for a minute, can that defense do what they need to do to take care of business? We saw it last week. They struggled against the Colts. I mean, we got to call it what it is.
They did. Yeah,
terrible. They played terribly on defense. There was a few stretches that they're okay. Yeah.
Matt Milano even looked confused back there, and that's a guy that I wanted to bring up right now because elephant in the room. We haven't lost with Matt Milano this year. That means obviously people remember he wasn't there for the Chiefs. 12-0. He did a really, really good job on Mark Andrews last week. Really, really good. He didn't shadow him or stay exclusively man on him. Trey was on him a little bit, but he did have the one pass breakup on a key third down on Mark Andrews, and that was huge.
That was a big play.
So I'm not going to say that Travis Kelce gets 2 touchdowns again. How big is Milano coming back for this team? Obviously, we all know the stat that we just said that they haven't lost with them. But if Milano plays that game, even though the Bills only scored 17 points, I think that maybe they have a chance to win it at the end. Maybe it's not a 9-point game.
And I think that the injury reports reversed last time. It was, Trey was on it, ended up playing. John Brown was on it, was ineffective.
Yeah,
it was kind of reverse, with Edwards-Helaire and their cornerbacks this time.
Yeah.
Should they suit up? Yeah, it's the AFC Championship game. I mean, if you get a long-term injury, you go into the offseason and you
there's
fix
nothing you can do.
They're going to play outside of being really.
There's nothing you can do about that.
Right. Which I don't, a lot of people are like, oh man, we're going to have to face Bashaud Breeland and still, they're still going to play Fenton and they're still going to play whatever. I mean, to me, it's like, I might take a hurt cornerback even after some of those depth guys. Maybe. I mean, not always. But there are situations to where can Antonio Hamilton be more effective? Probably not, but it is possible over a hurt or banged up ankle, foot, knee of some of the cornerbacks, or concussion in Bashaud Breeland's case. Concussion shoulder, that's not great.
No, that's really bad, yeah. I think the safeties for the Chiefs make up a lot for the cornerbacks, because it's not like they're really, really great. We talked about Tre'Davious Ward already. But with Matthew and Sorensen, Dirty Dan, as the Chiefs' own Twitter account called him, and Juan Thornhill usually just they're not the safeties. I feel like help out a lot, and is probably why they don't give up a lot of big plays, right?
Yeah, I mean that's what it is, and because they play all three of them, and you forgot Juan Thornhill. They play all three of them a ton because Matthew obviously plays a lot of different roles. We'll jump into the slot box. He'll play the box. He'll play strong safety. He'll play a couple of different roles on this defense. So you'll see a little bit from him from everywhere. And he had to, especially when Snead went out. I don't mind if you have to play Matthew in the slot. That's not the worst matchup to me. I think he's more effective elsewhere. I think he's more effective as a box or a free safety. So if I have 387 snaps out of the slot this year from Tyrann Mathieu, it means he's got to cover Beasley, which means he's out of the game. He needs to do whatever he can to make sure that Beasley doesn't get his, and maybe he wins some of those matchups, but he's not doing what he does best. To me, that's sniffing after the ball. That's his run defensive, incredible run defender, fair coverage guy. But if you're putting him on Beasley, I think you're in good shape because it's best on best, a little bit of best on best. And they might have to with the cornerback injuries because that would pop out. They might have to pop out with Jarius Snead. Who really plays both. So, and the team is worse when Snead's not playing slot, straight up. They just are defensively. Snead's been a good pick for them. So there's a lot to look at in this game. There's some of these stuff we'll talk about on our pregame show with the inactives of both ways. If there's anything shocking, the Bills got to take care of business. It's a hurt Patrick Mahomes. It's a Patrick Mahomes that'll play, but limitedly in his mobility. And it's something that, quite frankly, Travis Kelce's the best tight end on the planet. Tyreek Hill's a really good receiver. Some people are like, you're sleeping on Tyreek. I'm not. I'm just sleeping on their weapons. I just think you have Trey White. At the end of the day, you have Trey White. They're both going to win.
Yeah, even with Trey White hurt the last time around, he still only had 3 catches or something. He wasn't super effective. It was the
shut down Kelce. In a way, he had 2 touchdowns, but still, he didn't change Travis Kelce didn't change the game in week 6.
Yeah.
So that's something to watch out for. Is, to me, it's the teams with 2 and 3, and I think that he's better than Michael Pittman. That's not no joke, but. The way that they move the ball with 3 tight ends, the way that they move the ball with 3 receivers, and other teams that have different weapons, I don't think the Bills have had to go against a crazy complement of receivers. Can Sammy Watkins be that this week? Potential. We all know he's got the talent to be a good second receiver in this league. So will that show this week? Hope not, but it wouldn't really
report too. So I wouldn't be shocked either. Every time he plays against us, I feel like he takes it pretty personally.
89th ranked receiver by PFF. Mecole Hardman, one of the guys I think is terrible at football. It's made up for by how good his other quarterback, most notably is. But I think he's good I think he's not good at the game of football. He's a guy I watch. I've had him in deep dynasties. He's been such a struggle. He loses snaps to Byron Pringle at times. He loses snaps to Demarcus Robinson, who's awful himself.
One note on Byron Pringle on PFR, the Pro Football Reference, they actually said that his Mahomes quarterback rating, the Mahomes quarterback rating targeting Byron Pringle is second to only Travis Kelce, and then Tyreek Hill's actually after him. So, I mean, like, he doesn't target him a lot, but he's kind of become somewhat dependable for a guy with the name Byron Pringle, right?
Byron Pringle, 2018 from Kansas State, undrafted free agent. Played well. Actually won the game against the Bills in week 6, believe it or not, after the Clyde Edwards-Helaire fake fumble by Justin Zimmer punch out.
Right, yeah.
He went deep on 3rd and 12. The Bills actually had a chance to win that game down 6. And went deep and connected on a 30-yard pass to put him in field goal range to go up 9. That was the game. Pringle doesn't make that play. Bills are getting the ball back, driving with a chance to win. Pringle did show up against the Bills. So I don't mean to besmirch Byron Pringle. But he's a guy that I just don't, for AFC Championship game, they have Patrick Mahomes, they have Tyreek Hill, they have Travis Kelce. They have a hurt Sammy Watkins. They have a hurt Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They have an inactive Le'Veon Bell. They don't have a second tight end. There's nothing there. I think the team can survive against teams with one tight end. I think they struggle against different matchup problems when they can throw different 12 personnel, different personnel packages on the field. And we're not sure where it's going to go. If it's going to go to Burton, if it's going to go to Jack Doyle, we're just not sure. What's going to happen. Mo Alley Cox, we're just not sure in those scenarios. Miami did a lot of it with Smythe and Gesicki. But I mean, you're just really not sure what's going to happen in those scenarios. The Bills do better against proven players with less of them than they do with a plethora of talent, because like I call it the Myles Gaskin. We are just good. You're not great, but the Bills aren't going to game plan. Therefore, you have an opportunity. So that's the number one thing to take away from this game. The Chiefs have studs. They have studs. They have studs. They don't have 100 of them. Nor does anyone. So the Bills have an opportunity to take away Travis Kelce. They have an opportunity to limit Tyreek Hill. They have an opportunity to limit the running game this time. And they have an opportunity to get after Patrick Mahomes with a defensive line that's playing great right now, and to limit him and get after his turf toe and his ability to still rehabbing from taking a weird knockout. I mean, that's so weird, hard to play after 7 days. Right. Off of walking off the field, not knowing. I think they asked him what quarter it was, and he didn't know.
Wow, so, I didn't see that.
Yeah, that was he failed the one question, and that's what people were saying. He failed. That's automatically put him in concussion protocol. He didn't know this. He didn't know the quarter he was in. I mean, 1 week removed from that, taking real NFL shots. It's Patrick Mahomes here, but at the end of the day, it affects you a little bit.
Yeah, and we'll end the show on what's been the trendy topic of the week, and that's been you spoke out about it on Twitter, and then we tweeted it out from the podcast account, and it's that we might be seeing Chad Henne. They are saying that Mahomes is probably playing, but there's a solid possibility that we see Henne. And there's the Chiefs account that's saying like Bills fans want Henne. I mean, like we tweeted that out. We got a ton of responses. Everyone said they want a chance to take down Mahomes, but they'll take Henne. That seemed to be the general consensus of it. Now, maybe from a percentage chance, if Henne is in, what percentage chance do you give the Bills to win? And if Mahomes is in, how does it change?
Yeah, it changes. I mean, it's a big deal. And to me, I still want the best. I'm best. I tweeted the second, before anything happened, when I saw even Lamar Jackson on the ground, I tweeted, and I hope he gets up. That's all, that's all that I care about, because I don't want any asterisks next to this season. You beat Lamar when he was hurt. Well, I mean, quite frankly, I wanted him in there because his backup we hadn't prepared for and looked better at times, obviously with the Bills in a cover 2 zone. But that's the same situation I want here. We're not talking about week 7 anymore, where we need a W. Just got to get, things down the road and whatever. We're talking about the AFC Championship football game. I want Patrick Mahomes. I have the game at about 50-50 if he plays. And I think that's more than fair. The lines would agree with me. A lot of things would agree with me. I think that's where this game is. I've been 17-1 predicting Bills games. That's where that would be to me. Now with Chad Henne, I don't care about a 4th down run. That was bad on the Browns. I mean, they should have gotten the ball back and potentially had a chance.
The Browns were the Browns there. The Browns was the Browns, like, honestly.
They'll take it because they want a playoff game, and they'll say we're not the Browns because we still want a playoff game and this and that and the other. That was a Browns moment. That is a moment that the Bills have faced in similar years. You can't let the backup quarterback get outside and do that to you. He was not going to throw it deep. He was going to take underneath throws, get him in a little bit better position, take some time off the clock. You knew that, and you let him get around the edge, and you let him slide. Same thing on a shotgun. How do you not cover Tyreek Hill?
Right.
I just that is an awful play call by Andy Reid. I'm sorry. It worked. I'm sorry.
Really?
It's awful.
Okay, well, yeah, it's probably only a good play call because it worked.
I'm still going to say it's awful, even if they converted. I think it's a bad play call. I think you're putting a backup quarterback in a situation that requires him to make a football throw. Requires one of the best receivers to get open. That's fine. I'm not mad at that. It requires him to snap back, get the snap, make a good football throw on time, on target to the right person and the right read. Fair. Think it's a bad call in that situation because the Browns would have taken over and they would have lost the game. I mean, the game's over if they don't convert that play. I'll never want to put my team in a situation that I could potentially lose in because of that play call. Just quarterback sneak it.
Right.
I just it's 90+%. Anyways, I think it's about 85% of the Bills win if we see Chad Henne. I'm going 85%. One and
yeah.
2 and 10's too many. 2 and 10's too many.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
1 and 10 right, and 1.5. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got 1.5 out of 10 games that they would win.
I sent because ESPN. I asked because ESPN had their odds per their odds makers or whoever the hell ESPN however they make those things, and it was 38% chance the Bills win with Mahomes in. And I know we're splitting hairs here, but I really thought it'd be closer to 45. I thought that was a solid number. I feel like, maybe the odds makers are still not giving the Bills the credit they deserve after seeing that the Bills would open as 4-point underdogs to the Chiefs or 5-point favorites. The Browns that came out, before that game started. So, I mean, I feel like, that's just bulletin board material. You see people tweeting out bulletin board gifs all the time. Anytime anybody says anything bad, especially when the Chiefs are saying they're already planning their AFC Championship festivities or whatever the hell they're going to be doing for it, that McDermott's plastering that all over. And that's just giving the Bills more of an upper hand here. One thing I wanted to throw out before we get out of here.
Yep.
The red zone offense and defense for both teams, I think, is a part of this game that has to be talked about. Chiefs offense in the red zone, DVOA 10. Obviously, really, really good, but the Bills are right behind them on defense with 11th ranked DVOA in the red zone. But when it comes to the Bills on offense and the Chiefs on defense, it's ridiculous. The Bills are top 10, they're 9th, and the Chiefs are actually dead last in the NFL. And when Josh Allen still hasn't turned the ball over in the red zone this far into his career, that is huge. That is huge.
Dead last defensively, yeah.
Dead last in DVOA. So, take that as which I trust that more than just the actual numbers. I know you do too. But if anyone's skeptical of the stats, and you want to go check it out, it's probably not in touchdowns allowed or yards allowed, but relative to how other teams are performing in the same scenarios, that's what DVOA is. Chiefs are dead last in the NFL. So
in red zone?
In the red zone, yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a big factor. How bad were the Ravens? 0-5 last week in the red zone? It's 0-4 or 5. I can't recall where some of those field goals were missed from, if they got into the red zone or not. But it's one of those. They were awful. I mean, the Bills' red zone defense came through and did their job. And I think the Bills' offense is very good in the red zone, outperformed. You saw Lamar Jackson's first ever pick in the red zone. You're just not hoping for something like that from Allen being his first ever this week. So if not, I mean, everything favors the Bills in this game, and that's not coming from a homer perspective at all. But the X factors, and that's Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. If they can't figure that out, then they can't figure it out.
It'll be a long day if they can't figure it out.
Frank making throws, showing that he's a Superman on a turf toe throat chokeout. I mean, he's the best player in the NFL. So, pretty simple. Exactly.
And if we lose to the best player in the NFL in the AFC Championship game, I'm not gonna, make excuses. But yeah, exactly. That's not a bad way to go out.
You got to come back next year or better.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll give our predictions during the pregame show this weekend. But a little spoiler, I do feel pretty good. I do feel pretty good about the game. I think a lot of things are going the Bills' way, and there might be some asterisks, but a win's a win. When it gets to the playoffs, they might ask how you got there, but I really could not care less. The AFC Championship game this weekend. Kevin, I'm super excited for the pregame show. Don't know when we'll do it. We'll let everybody know. We'll tweet that out as soon as we have that information. But until Sunday, let's all get a few more good nights of sleep because we know Saturday none of us will. Go Bills. Good night now.